Good morning, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening to the podcast version, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. I'll be live for the next hour or so we'll try and get through as many of your dilemmas. Reminder for those on YouTube, deadline stream today will be at 5:30 p.m. UK time, ahead of the 6:30 p.m. deadline. Obviously, we've got some additional fixtures we now know of in game week 29. Bournemouth versus Brighton, Chelsea versus Liverpool, Leeds versus Nottingham Forest, Manchester United against Brentford, West Ham against Newcastle. I feel like I've missed one off there, actually. No, don't think so. It's 12 additional games. Leicester against Villa, sorry. Leicester against Villa. 12 teams will have doubles in 29. We found that out earlier in the week. It is a big week this week, blank double game week, and obviously the FA Cup fixtures next midweek are going to have a huge bearing on chip strategy for many of us. Right, let's get straight into the questions. Ola Stamos is in first, just literally says good morning. Good morning, Hola. Kartik Rao says, what to do with Martial, KDB, Botman, Mitoma, Patterson and Shaw? Yikes. Martial's completely binnable. KDB is possibly a route to Salah for you. Botman may prove useful for you. Newcastle obviously playing blank game week 28, we know, and double in game week 29. Mitoma's obviously got the double in 27. Patterson, he's not going to play tomorrow. Are you that fussed about the points at Arsenal? Probably not. Luke Shaw, I think you can come back to, subject to your chip strategy plans. So, I mean, from that, I'd probably be holding Botman and Mitoma, and that should give you enough value available to be thumping things in. There's going to be hits flying about everywhere this week, so -8 I think is perfectly reasonable. Rob Pick says, good morning, mate. Really in a quandary with Liverpool. Salah, Nunes and Tarkowski from -4, or Salah, Gakpo and TAA from -4. Also, would you consider Ederson to Alisson for a hit or not? Saka captain, if that matters. It does a little bit, Rob. Not massively. Just there's less value in the hit for Salah, for example. Obviously, if you're not intending to captain, but look, I've done it. I got Mo in on Wednesday night. The problem is, Rob, and I recommend you're a patron and recommend listening to the differential show where I go on quite a lot about Liverpool assets, and if Leeds win, then potentially being stuck with your Liverpool assets for quite a while. Cody Gakpo doesn't strike me as someone that I'd potentially want for the next couple of months. Now, for a lot of people, that may sound ridiculous, but if Liverpool play in blank game with 28 and double in 29, and you're trying to manoeuvre that period, possibly, it's not to say all of you will, many of you won't, but if you are manoeuvring that situation without chips, then they're going to be difficult to get rid of. A case in point would be, it's one of two different ways I can go right now, and there may even be more, but if Leeds beat Fulham on Tuesday, and Liverpool are playing Fulham in game week 28, and I'm then sitting there with 3 Liverpool, 3 Arsenal and 2 Newcastle ready, with 8 ready for game week 28, I'm not free hitting that week, am I? So they're definitely not going before 28. And then if I decide I'm not wildcarding or using a free hit in 29, they're there again, and they offer great cover for game week 32, which is an issue as well, and they play Nottingham Forest at home. And are you going to have the luxury trying to juggle other things to move those Liverpool players about? So, of course, you can come off. You can come off them straight away if you want, but it might be subject to your chip strategy. If you know you're wildcarding in, say, 27, for example, not so much of an issue. But the results in the Cup may define that you decide to do something different, right? So, I'm not massively keen on Cody Gakpo. For this week, perfectly reasonable, but I'm not massively keen on it beyond. Tarkowski will cover you fine for 28, Rob, but you definitely want to bin for 29. I think Salah Nunes is the best combination from that. You may want to consider, Rob, yes, Salah Nunes plus Alisson, and make that your Liverpool free to give you some defensive coverage. The hit for Ederson, it's not ideal, but you have got an extra fixture. Many of you will know I don't like taking hits for goalkeepers. But when you've got a double over a single and potential extra coverage for games to come, Liverpool playing 28, City are unlikely to, if that scenario happens. We do know that Liverpool will double in 29 and Manchester City definitely won't. So there is a case, if you're running through, definitely to do it. Jordan Bellaby says, morning James, still waiting for my talking tactics video. On a more serious note, Costa or Starbucks, have a nice weekend please. Jordan is relating to the appointment of Javi Gracia and asking me if I can do a Leeds talking tactics on Gracia. I need the time to research it, Jordan. It's not something I'm going to do and do it half-hearted, right? So have I got the time over this weekend? I'm going to be very honest. He's probably not something I'm going to have the time to research, probably. But yeah, I've got eyes on the prize. If something stands out from Saturday and I get the opportunity to watch the game back on Saturday night, possibly, but then with 2 Saturday night games, I'm going to be honest and say that's probably unlikely, and I'll be at Tottenham on Sunday. Costa or Starbucks? Starbucks for me. I've mentioned this before. I have a right problem with them frappuccinos. Them caramel frappuccinos are absolutely banging, and Costa, from that perspective, don't compete with that. Coffee-wise, nothing between them particularly. Maybe slight favouritism for Starbucks. Costa, I think, maybe has better food choices. But yeah, probably that the Frappuccino edges it Starbucks way, I think. Rob Pick also says, rumours circulating in my circles of Spurs busting their budget to buy Tom Bradshaw for 288 million in tribute to my points total in Gaffer this week. Hashtag Tom Bradshaw fan club. Rob is referring to his score in Gaffer, the championship fantasy game this week, where he scored 288 points. Yes, 288 points. Game week rank of 1. Very well done. That would need a lot of explaining for me to explain how Rob has managed to do that. But let me just say to you, a crazy chip that is available in Gaffer. Rob says, wider strategy question since I introed with Liverpool. If Fulham beat Leeds, what are the other key results that would influence your strategy and in what way? Have a good one, mate. It's definitely the key one. And what I'd say, Rob, is in reference to the games that were on Tuesday, those are the other ones that could influence it a lot. So if Man City lost to Bristol City, there's a fair chance the next night, if West Ham don't beat Man United, City will play in 28, right? Then no doubles for City further in the future. Leicester play Blackburn on Tuesday night. If Leicester go out, Brentford Leeds, Leicester is on in 28, and that's going to impact people massively that people might not be thinking about at the moment. Suddenly, if you're looking at Brentford playing in 28 and people want to steam into them for their double in 27 and knowing they're double in 29, it's free Brentford for anybody carrying through and not using chips over 28, 29. So that's certainly a factor for Brentford. It could be, for example, that if Liverpool lost... if Leeds lost to Fulham and then Liverpool playing 28, but Leicester lost as well, that might still put me on the same path of perhaps running through 28 because of the Brentford players, for example. So that's probably the main other one, but Fulham Leeds is likely to be the definitive one. It really is. What I recommend people do at the moment, which is what I started doing over the last 24 hours, is I've been looking at the idea of running through the game weeks if obviously Liverpool play in 28, because it wouldn't make sense. I've gone for 3 Liverpool, right? I've gone for Trent, Núñez and Salah. It wouldn't make sense for me to free hit in 28, and it probably, with what I have, probably won't make sense for me to do a lot in 29 either. Now, if I don't land nice for 29, the wild card is certainly an option there, but certainly wouldn't be using the free hit chip in 28. What I've begun to do is look at the alternative, the worst case scenario: Leicester winning the cup, Fulham winning the cup. And let's be honest, these are the most likely scenarios, right? The most likely scenario for 28 currently is that the one additional fixture, and there will be one additional, would be Wolves against Leeds. And that's a tough call. It's not 2 teams I'd want to particularly invest in on a free hit, for example. Leeds admittedly do have a double in 29 as well, and it's a very attractive double in the sense that their second fixture is against Nottingham Forest, but the first one's to Arsenal away. When I get to 29, is my priority going to be Leeds? Probably not. So I've begun looking at alternatives, and the one that I'm really looking at the moment, actually now, is wildcard 26, which I'll explain more, I think, probably on Monday's podcast, because I could make this the whole stream if I explained it properly now. But yeah, in short, I'm possibly looking at activating the wild card maybe after the cup results for game week 26 rather than 27. I just think the balance actually might be a little bit better, and it puts me an extra transfer in the bank for a future week running through game week 27, 28. And I'd possibly wildcard it to set it up, get me sort of 6 Brighton Brentford, bench boost 29, carry through 28, which I can do under this as well, subject to the results, and probably free hit 32, but I'd obviously have the option of 32 or 34, for example. And I ran through a plan on FPL.team last night, all the way up on using my projections, which are available on that site, all the way up to game week 38. And unbelievably, Rob, without even trying under the projections, I still landed with 14 doublers for game week 37. Now, I'm obviously not going to wildcard 26 to bench boost 37, and that would be ridiculous to try and plan that, of course. But I think it does emphasise that if the projections and the cup results have gone to plan, and if I'm partly right, actually manoeuvring that rest of the season is doable. I'd also have 10 or 11 doublers for 34 as well. So that makes me think I can manoeuvre it. And you know me, Rob, I like planning ahead. So wildcard 26 suddenly is the one that I'm potentially looking at if the cup results don't go my way. I would always rather wildcard. If I was wildcard 26, ideally I'd activate it tonight, right? Catch some price rises and stuff. But the players and teams I'll be targeting, not likely to get early price rises this week. They'll get rises in later weeks as other FPL managers build towards them. So I'm now comfortable. I think it's a really good position to be in for many people, is I'm now comfortable in my thinking, whatever that Fulham Leeds result is. Very comfortable. I'm not going to be going into Tuesday night thinking, come on Leeds, come on Leeds. I couldn't really give a shit. The way it will land, I'll deal with it from there and work away. So what's the alternative? I know there's a lot of you be going, I need Leeds to win on Tuesday night. Okay. But the chances are that they won't. Fulham are favourites. It's a close game, particularly with Gracia taking over as Leeds' new manager. Fulham are slight favourites. So look at it. What are you going to do if Fulham win? Addy Tour says, with City not getting a double in 29 and having the same value in Kane as Haaland, who would you remove? Right now, Kane is the decision, because I think the next 2 fixtures are tough in the sense of Chelsea and Wolves. And I may still captain Haaland next week in 26, whereas I wouldn't with Kane. 27, Kane's got the better of it, but I can't see me captaining him. I wouldn't captain him over Rashford as it stands. As long as Rashford came through last night, okay. There's some I saw the end of the game, and I know he was potentially hobbling off, but I'm sure we'll probably see him in the cup final on Sunday. And of course, Brighton, Brentford, and others doubled that week, so I'd probably still go with a doubler. It's probably Tony, isn't it? 27. McAllister's the one I'd also alternatively really be looking for captaincy 27. So he's expendable. On my plan, Rob, if I did go for that wildcard 26, he'd go, and I'd be penciling to get him back in game week 30 or game week 31. That would be the plan currently. Not Rob. So why am I still saying Rob? Cessed with you, mate. Addy, sorry. But yeah, of the two, I've sold Kane. Haaland stayed for me for now. I've sold Kane. Ryan says, what do you think about captaining Ketcher as an outside punt? Yeah, reasonable. The underlying data's fine. I mean, I'd probably rank him sort of 4th or 5th best option this week, personally. He's missed a number of big chances over the last couple of weeks, but then suggests he's underperforming his XG, and if Arsenal create the chances for him, it's just a case of whether he's going to take them or not. So, yeah, I don't hate it. There's plenty worse options than captaining the forward playing for the best team in the league at the moment, right? Philip Sukta says, hi James, thanks for the great content. I'm considering a -4, Shaw or Kane to TAE or Nunes, or even -8 both. Already have Salah. Do you think it's better to be more bold with this or play it safe? I think bold, mate. Personally, you're not going to be alone with them hits this week. So I'd probably get it done, mate. Just obviously double check on Luke Shaw for future game weeks, subject to perhaps alternative plans that you may have. Sage says, I've brought in 3 Liverpool and McNeil for -8. Would you additional hit to bring in Tarkowski instead of Aki or Patterson? Do you need it? Arguably for Patterson. Aki's important to understand today from... I've made my transfers already now, but I spoke on a differential show we released on midnight for patrons last night. I spoke about Laporte, his fitness being quite important, but I've decided to go through with selling Nathan Aki already. But if Laporte's absent, Aki almost definitely plays, I think. So I'd be keen to get that Laporte information. That may influence your decision. Lin Tian Bao says, hey James, asking this as I'll miss the deadline stream, what's your thought process behind choosing between Darwin and Watkins? I think the clincher for me is the most likely scenario actually for me now, despite me saying there's a chance many will hold Liverpool for ages, and that could be me. The clincher is the most likely scenario is I'm binning straight away possibly. And therefore, I come to the conclusion that I wanted to limit what I did this week. So I went with the most powerful 3 Liverpool for this immediate game week. That was my decision-making process. In terms of covering future weeks, Watkins, great choice. Again, on that Patreon podcast, I discussed Watkins and Pickford being the 2 Liverpool players that I was thinking about the most this week. As Watkins covers through future game weeks brilliantly. But if I went for Watkins for that hit now, and went, say, for me, it would have been Alisson instead of Nunez, which obviously if Liverpool keep 2 clean sheets, great, but do any of us really think that's going to happen? Probably not. If I went for Watkins as part of that now, I think it'd be regrettable if I end up just wildcarding on, say, Wednesday night in any case, or on Thursday. So that's what clinched it for me. Ryan says, second question from me. If given the chance to go back in time, would you have taken Erik Ten Hag over Conte? I mean, yeah, absolutely. Tottenham had talks with Erik Ten Hag during the summer when they appointed Nuno. And they pissed about with him too much. Otherwise, they'd have got him. He's doing an absolutely sensational job so far at Manchester United. Spud Maestro says, like the stream, everybody. Yes, for those on YouTube, there's around about 12% of you have hit the fun button. Doesn't cost anything. It'd be very much appreciated. Pavanar says, hey James, hope you're doing well. A big dilemma for me. Essentially, it's either TAA Watkins -8, which leaves me with 10 players, or Darwin -4, which leaves me with 9. Like, I think it's not essential to have 11 players this week. We've spoken about that quite a lot. So I don't think it's essential. Again, it depends on your future plan. If Watkins is going to be really useful for you over the next 5 game weeks, then do it. It's one less transfer. Think of it like this with Watkins. As much as I've come to the conclusion not to do it, he'll be a big target for me if Liverpool end up playing in 28. He'll be part of my strategy. It could be who I buy for Haaland even. That might sound ridiculous, but that might be what I do on 28. Just go right Haaland to Watkins and then potentially back again in 30. So he'll be on radar for me, and when that moment comes, it'll probably be a hit for me, right? So if it's not a hit now, it's probably going to be a hit later on, but just double check on your plans, right? Colin Johnson says, morning James, love the pods mate, mustard. FPL, Mahrez and Kane to Salah and Darwin, or Kane to Darwin and Shaw to Trent? I'd go Mo this week, personally. That would be my take at the moment. So yeah, I think the Salah option for me. Konstantinos says, you've got Salah. Have you got Salah in both of them? No, you don't. So yeah, the Salah option. Konstantinos says, hey James, my front three are Felix, Nonso, Haaland. Is it crazy to move Haaland for Darwin? This enables Nonso to Tony next week. Nobody will captain Haaland anyway till game week 30 onwards, right? On the last point, as already said, I may captain him in 26. And his EO will still be well above 100%, I think, even for game week 27 when he goes to Palace. It's not a terrible fixture, is it? I mean, to be honest, his EO could be over 100% for game week 29 just with a single. I guess the amount of dead teams. But in terms of live ownership, yeah, no. He probably certainly won't be 29. The others, he could be. I mean, people might get, especially if Tony gets booked against Fulham in game week 26 and he's on 9 yellows going in 27, that'll put a lot of people off. And then you're looking at, McAllister's Matomas for captaincy and stuff. People might get put off and go, I don't need to do that. And 26, Newcastle at home is obviously a tough fixture, but it's a fixture at the Etihad. So, I wouldn't rule out captain. He'd be better than Rashford next week. United going to Liverpool. I know what Liverpool look like defensively at the moment, but they'll be right up for Manchester United, and they'll sit off a little bit deeper. I think they'll have to, and I do think they will in that particular fixture. So what's the alternatives to Haaland in 26? It's Arsenal, isn't it? And the problem with Arsenal is, obviously in 26, to play 3 days after the Everton game. And if the likes of Saka, Odegaard play fully in 25, which I'd fully expect them to, could we see a bit of rotation for that Bournemouth game? Now, right now, I'd say no. But we might feel different. We might feel different this time next week. So I wouldn't rule out Captain Haaland 26. And I may still do that. Lin Tianbao says also, is Diego Carlos being back in training for Villa a factor in deciding which of their defenders to get? And in that case, would it still be Mings for you? Thanks. Yes, it would still be Mings for me. I think when Carlos is available, that if he dislodges one, which I'm sure he will do eventually, but it may not be as immediate as people think, because they don't need to rush it, let's be honest, then I think it will be for Konsa. Now, there'll be Villa fans who know more than me and might say different, but I've not had anyone come to me and go, no, James, it will be Mings that loses his place as yet. And we've got a lot of Villa followers. So I think at the moment that info's accurate. Like, it could be wrong, but yes, if I had to buy a Villa defender right now, it would still be Tyrone Mings. That would be my take. Josh Hinchcliffe says, morning, pal. Would you rather bring in James or Chilwell this week? I'm likely to run through 28 and don't fancy a Liverpool defender. Cheers. That's understandable. You won't be the only one thinking you don't fancy a Liverpool defender. I'd think James, personally. You've got to know that the looming shadow of Cucurella is definitely there. As Plaqueta, we don't have he's okay. He's fine after that heavy clash last week. But when we say fine, we don't know when he's going to play again. Might be a week, might be a month, might be 2 months. I don't know what the significant knock-on impact of that is. And there aren't huge alternatives for Chelsea at right back. So, Reece James. And I think the key point is the two fixtures that you need coverage for most are this week. You're likely to be short of players. And game week 28, they play Everton. Of course, if you're free hitting 28, that's not the case. But if you're not, those are the 2 weeks. Chelsea don't play in the midweek before Everton. So I think you can be extremely confident that Reece James plays against Tottenham and Everton. Ben Chilwell, not quite so much. 29 also falls after an international break. Hopefully James has had some time to recover then. I think there's every chance, I'd mentioned this previously on another pod we did this week, that I think there's a possibility Reece James might not be in that England squad. They may use that period to give him some recovery, particularly if Gareth Southgate perhaps doesn't intend to start him, let him have a little breather and more recovery. And that, if that happens, that would be good news for him for game week 29 as well. So it would be James for me, logically, at the moment. Who's next? Shuniket says, would you do Martinelli to Saka for -4? Already have Odegaard and Nketiah? Yes, I probably would. I guess this is a similar thinking to, I made a very similar move in game week 23, and it was part of getting the best Arsenal for Arsenal's 2 doubles. I think, yes. Saka's likely to play 3 games over the next 2, or at least start them. Martinelli, I think we now know. Obviously, Trossard started against Villa. Yeah, I think Martinelli will start against Leicester tomorrow, personally. But I think we're aware of there's going to be some movement there with Trossard. Emily Sissoni says, hey, James, which 2 would you start out of Nana, Bueno and Nonto? Who's Nana? Nana, I wouldn't start with Nana, bless her. She's no longer with us. Nana, who's that meant to be? Who's that meant to be, Nana? I'm going to have to say Bueno and Nonto because I don't know who Nana is. Sorry. Michael Broadbent says, morning, James. Great content again this week. Left field question, but have you considered moving the community from Slack to Discord now that Discord is fully integrated with Patreon? Cheers. At the moment, Michael, no. It's not to say something we won't do, but no. What you have to consider is, Michael, is to move the 700 plus that are in Slack now to a new platform is quite challenging. If we'd started up new now, then maybe that's something we'd do. And it's not to say we won't still do it, but that needs some thought. And I don't think I'd want two on the go. My brain wouldn't be able to deal with it, personally. So at the moment, the answer, Michael, would be no currently. Ludwig says, already got Salah and Darwin this game week, considering trips to Robertson, no money for TAA from -4, but saving my wild card for after game week 30. Does Robertson outscore trips by 8 before game week 29 when I would bring back trips? Well, that depends on if Liverpool play Fulham in 28, I think. 8, out by 8. If they played Fulham in 28, I'd probably say yes. With the additional fixtures now and the fact Newcastle go to City. Debatable if Trips gets that fixture back on Robertson in 28. But then I would guess you could go back to Trips in 28. I'd be conscious. Personally, I think for anybody planning to run through at the moment, 28, 29, I'd probably be keeping Trippier at the moment. Burger Hook says, hi James, already done 2 free transfers. Would you do Morris to Gakpo -4? Probably not. I think Morris probably comes back in the City team tomorrow, but how long's a piece of string and who knows, right? It's because there's teams blanking and you may not have any bench coverage. It's more attractive this week than it would be in a week where you may have a bench player coming in. That's less likely this week, I guess. I'm just not massively keen on the Gakpo option. Not massively keen. How confident were you that we even plays twice? Then it's United afterwards. I'm not convinced, personally. John Cahill says, morning James, mate. How does Reece James usually get on against Spurs? Do you reckon he'll sit and stay with Son or be attacking like Reece James normally performs very well against Tottenham, and I would expect him to win that duel with Heung-min Son on Sunday. It's part way I think Chelsea will win, as I've said on various bits of content this week. Although that comes down to more concerns I have in the midfield area. But he's likely to put the brakes on. What they did in the 2-2 earlier in the season was James played right-sided centre-back, but pushed on really high as they shift across system. Or did he play right-back and push into right wing-back? I can't remember, but anyway, defensively was very deep, offensively was very high with the ball. Unlikely to do that sort of role this time, just because he's working his way back to fitness, so I think you're more likely to see a more defensive Reece James. Personally, doesn't mean he can't still have an offensive impact for you, because Tottenham, as we know, will get very deep. So that gives greater scope to push on offensively. But I think there'll be a consciousness about him needing to recover quickly against Son. That would be my take. John Cahill says, was against Dortmund question. I didn't see the Chelsea game against Dortmund, so I can't comment on that, mate. Joseph Robinson says, hello, James. Do you think there is even just a slight hint that your King Harry has lost his appetite for goals since he broke Jimmy Greaves' record, even though only a couple of games ago? Absolutely none, mate. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. Would you think he's... Oh, that's it, yeah. I think he don't care about the Premier League record. He hasn't lost any appetite, mate. So no, he's just had a couple of blanks. He hit a shot against West Ham that went like 20 yards wide because he hit it too early. Remember, he's over keen to still get goals. So no, there's nothing in that, mate. Stephen Moore says, hi James, Walker to Van Dijk from -4 for this week only. We'll move to Estupiñán 26 anyway, and Mahrez to Gakpo from -4. Don't know if either of these are worth it, as both should start for City. Yeah, I mean, I've already covered the Gakpo. I'm not convinced about that on Van Dijk either, to be totally honest. Not convinced. And if it's 1 week early, I'd definitely want to go for Trent. I'd want to find a way to make that happen if you were to make that sort of move. So I'm not overly keen, to be honest, Stephen. You know what the upside is, right? And does it prove worth it? There's every chance. I'm not overly keen, though, especially when you're saying it's only 1 week. Sean says, morning, James. Deadline dilemma. Robertson for a free gets me 11, including Aki. Or Trent Tarkovsky for -4 gets me 11 without Aki. Thanks. Hang on. Right, I see what you're saying. So you would sell Aki as part of your -4. Okay, Robertson. Probably be the take, mate. Jacob McGinty says, morning, James. How do you see the cup final going on Sunday? Will Pope's absence be as big as people are expecting? It's impossible to say. No one's seen Karius in a Newcastle shirt, so no one knows, right? Listen, he wouldn't be the first goalkeeper to come in under circumstances like this and walk away afterwards with the man of the match, honestly. Football writes these fairy tales sometimes. So I think what's liable to play an impact more is the form of the two teams. So since we knew the finalists, I think Manchester United have picked up a kind of another head of steam, where Newcastle's results have, let's just say, dipped a little bit. So I think Manchester United are stronger favourites now than I would have thought when we knew who the finalists would be. But Newcastle have the benefit of, for example, Gomes being back. We haven't seen the last number of weeks. That said, so do United with Casemiro. What's the fatigue impact of United off the back of that victory against Barcelona last night? Would have put a lot of effort into the game. So really, really looking forward to it. I mean, it's the most I've looked forward to a League Cup final in a very, very long time. Although last year's final between Liverpool and Chelsea, despite finishing 0-0, was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think Manchester United will probably shade it and win it at this stage. But I'm really looking forward to it. And Newcastle definitely can win. They definitely can get it done. Steve says, morning, James. Good luck this week. How do you think the new Leeds manager will change their style, and how long before they become good again? Thanks for all your content. Well, the big thing is, I think they've got offensive players who can score goals. Bamford, Nonto, Somerville, Sinistera to come back, Rutter to be integrated, perhaps Rodrigo be back maybe after the international break, I'd possibly guess. You've got the likes of Aronson, Harrison, and not short of attacking players that can cause problems. But if you don't fix the problem defensively, the problems I think will continue. Now I'm very keen to see what happens in the next couple of weeks with Leeds. That is a huge game for them tomorrow. I think the fans know how big a game it is, and they'll get right behind the team. Absolutely get right behind the team. It's kind of echoes of when they beat Norwich right late in the game last season. That was a couple of weeks later in the season, but I get that sort of vibe about the game. It'll be tense. They might not be at their best, but the atmosphere will be good for Leeds. And I think they'll shade the game tomorrow. In terms of what he'll change, the only honest answer I can give you, Steve, is I haven't had the chance to do enough research on him this week to tell you. But I imagine he'll want to come in the first instance and look at what he's got. I don't think he's going to change the will. I don't expect Leeds to be changed into a back three instantly, for example. That might be something that gets looked at further down the line. Alistair Copen says, morning, mate. Had a quick glance through the posts and no one has asked about captaincy. I know you're on Saka over Salah. Just wanted to know your reasons. Really struggling with the decision. Cheers. The reason for the decision is pretty simple, actually. I have got Arsenal down for 5 goals this week and Liverpool 3. So that's it. I think in terms of the fixtures, I think Arsenal have the better of it. I think Leicester and Everton are 2 better fixtures offensively than Crystal Palace and Wolves. Saka's also incredible form. Mo Salah is not. I know Mo Salah scored in the last 2 games at Anfield, but to say he's in incredible form, no. You could say that both of those goals, certainly the Real Madrid goal, but you could say both of those goals were down to large goalkeeping errors. I'm sure most people will say that they were both down to large goalkeeping errors. So it's form, it's fixtures, it's predictions. I think there is a minor possibility of Salah rotation. Minor. And there is also a minor for Saka, but I think less so. I think if Saka was to get rested for a game, I think it would be Bournemouth would be my take at the moment. Although I think Liverpool losing to Real Madrid probably helps the idea of the big hitters probably playing twice this week. because there's greater importance. But remember, Liverpool play Manchester United after the Wolves game. It's worth saying there's 4 days space in between all of them. So there's a number of reasons for me, Alistair, why Saka. Rockpie123 says, morning James, a lot of the focus has obviously been on game week 25 and to a certain extent game week 28 and 29, but is game week 32 still likely to be the hardest blank to navigate? It very well could be. And one of the problems with 32 is a lot of the teams people will want coverage of play each other. So United and Chelsea both double in 29. If Manchester United reach the FA Cup semi-finals, that's off in 32. Newcastle playing 28, got a double 29. Tottenham, despite no double 29 and probably unlikely fixture 28, will have a double coming up in 34 and some good fixtures before it. Newcastle Tottenham would be off in 32. And Brighton, there'll be plenty of Brighton coverage coming off the back of this period, 27, 29, I imagine, particularly for free hitters in 28. If you free hit 28, you're going to have a lot of Brighton. There's every chance they won't play again in 32. So those 6 teams are the most likely currently not to play in 32. You could also lose, if Southampton gets an FA Cup semi-final, the Arsenal-Southampton fixture. And it could be that Liverpool are the only team from the Big 7 that plays in 32. However, caveat for you. In the event that Man City, Tottenham reach the FA Cup semi-finals, possible, and Brighton don't, possible, then I think Newcastle Brighton will go into 32. And we could have as many as 8 fixtures in now. And if people bench boosting just for example 29, and let's say 5 maybe from Newcastle Brighton, then to have that fixture added to 32 would be absolutely massive. Now again, the only way that happens is if City make the Cup semi-final, Tottenham make the Cup semi-final, and Brighton don't. But in that eventuality, I think the fixture will go in there. And it's possible. When will we know, James? Well, highly likely before game week 29, but definitely after game week 28. Let me put it that way for you. Unless, of course, there is a way that you would potentially know earlier that it wouldn't happen. An example of that would be if Manchester City and Tottenham played each other in the FA Cup quarter-final. So then one of them's definitely going out. So that would mean highly likely one of Brighton, City or Newcastle, Tottenham would be on. But still wouldn't make it factually. It would still need Brighton to go out and they could go out in the quarterfinals. There's no way of 100% knowing until 28 is done, basically. Connell Hooley says, I have Rico Lewis and Mitrovic with 0 in the bank. Should I hold or take hits? I'm fielding 11 players with them included. 5 doublers. I've used both my free transfers. I have both Saka and Salah. I'm trying to think how you can manoeuvre that. The problem is you're probably booking yourself in. And Ketcher you might be able to get to maybe, but you may already have 3 Arsenal. I think you're going up in value to Watkins, aren't you? So if you've got no money in the bank, you can't really do it. Something like Lewis to Tarkowski and Mitrovic to Nketiah, I'd argue would probably be worth it under the circumstance. But if you've already got the 3 Arsenal, I don't know what you'd be doing. Like, I would not go for an Everton or Wolves forward. I would not. I would just probably suck it up. I think what you may need to do there, Connell, is look at alternatives. He's selling another, but then you're looking at a -8. And if you've used both your free transfers already, I'm going to suggest you've already got decent coverage of Arsenal, Liverpool. So it's probably a no. It's probably just, it is what it is. Greenback Soccer says, good morning. Good morning. James Brennan says, morning, mate. Kane, KDB and Botman to Salah, Nunes and Trent for -8. Or KDB and Botman to Salah and Tarkowski for -4. I'd go to 3 Liverpool, and that's the 3 that I've gone for, mate. Spud Maestro says, hi James, with my team I would prefer to dead end until game week 30 plus and wildcard then, but I will probably be scrambling to get to and from Brighton Brentford assets with hits. Do you think there's value in free hit 27? There's definitely potentially value in it. I think the problem is most teams have good game weeks in game week 27. And it's part of the reason to consider wildcarding in game week 26, because I won't be set up well for 26 but it will be set up well for 27 either way. And that's because the fixtures that City go to Palace, it's not the easiest, but it's a good fixture. Arsenal go to Fulham. All right, it's not the easiest, but it's still a decent fixture. United have Southampton at home. Tottenham have Nottingham Forest at home. Liverpool go to Bournemouth, and there's a good chance we've all got coverage of that. Chelsea go to Leicester is okay. It's good fixtures. It's good fixtures for the teams that we'll have coverage of. So, I mean, even down to like Everton at home to Brentford is okay. If you still got some of theirs. Wolves at Newcastle, you'd probably bench, right? But that's the problem with the free hit 27. It's not a problem as such, but you are potentially removing players who've got good fixtures. You could steam into 6 Brighton and Brentford players in 27 on a free hit, but you'll probably be taking out players who could also score very well in that week, and that's the small issue with it. Plus, if you're planning to plan through, Spud, do you not want Brentford and Brighton potentially for 29 maybe? Consider Brighton could have an extra fixture with Newcastle. I know I've mentioned the 32 possibly, but the most likely game week currently for that, I reckon, might be game week 31. So there's another potential double for Brighton in there, right? So I think probably get them in. I think the most likely for me is if Liverpool are going to play in 28 and end up running through, the most likely for me is probably get maybe 3 of them in, something like that. I don't think steaming into 6 is just not going to happen, is it? Brian Lloyd says, morning, James. Forget how many minus I'm on already. I still only have 10 players. Would you take a -4 to do Botman to someone? If so, who? Already have Trent and Tarkowski. I mean, if you haven't got an Arsenal defender, yeah, I'd probably do it. Or if you haven't got 3 Arsenal, then yes. But there's every chance that you do, Brian. So if you've got 3 Arsenal, no. If you don't, then I'd get an Arsenal defender, and my favourite on that would probably be Gabriel at this stage, just for security of starts over the forthcoming weeks. Brian Lloyd says, benches Matoma, Rashford, Trippier plus Botman. Don't really want to sell any. Then don't. Go with 10. It's literally as simple as that, Brian. Gurdon88 says, thoughts on De Gea to Alisson? Yeah, I've really considered that move myself this week. It's off the table for me now. Yeah, I've really considered it. The clincher for me, I think, is that there's every chance if I end up running through to 29 without using chips in between, De Gea is a really good one for me for 29, I think. It might be that I can't get sure, and it might be I have no United defensive coverage that week, and that's been part of the clincher. Part of the clincher for me. Also, 27's good fixture, Southampton at home. Which would, I think if I'm sitting there at that point, although I'd love to get David Raya, do I need to? You know, Southampton at home could be good, right? So there's those 2 weeks have factored the decision for me. Is also the knowing, like I said, that for me it's not effective just Alisson for De Gea. This might be what be different for you. Is I've got Danny Ward, right? I don't expect anything this week, but he is there. He is there, and Liverpool probably got to keep a clean sheet for it to be worthwhile, and Leicester not to keep a clean sheet. Now the Leicester clean sheet's unlikely, but you do get randomness with goalkeepers. I've seen goalkeepers lose 5-0 and get double point hauls. I mean, Lucas Fabianski losing at 5-0 at Man City, saved a penalty and was in the bonus. That's ridiculous. So there's a certain amount of randomness with goalkeepers. So I've decided to just play Danny Ward this week. That's the decision I've made currently. Jose says, Ricardo Rodder says, praying for a Nico Williams masterclass. You pray for it, mate. The good news for you is obviously Serge Aurier is out injured, so we can certainly expect Williams to play. That's great news for Suj. What I would say is I wouldn't have high expectations on returns this week. Asaf Dijon, if for those free hitting this week, by the way, I would go with Jared Bowen on a free hit. Really would. Asaf Dijon says Felix or Watkins from 25-27. The other will probably join in 28. It's difficult. I think for me it would have been Watkins, and I just think there's more assuredness on starts in the immediate. Right? I think we can't say there's no chance of Felix rotation with the number of sheer options Chelsea have got. And I know John Duran's obviously in the background. Has looked lively in his cameos for Aston Villa so far, but I think we can expect Watkins to keep starting. So preferences for Watkins currently. Also, once you get to 28, if that's when you're going to add, or in 26, you're building up the information on Felix. I think you might decide, oh shit, it's Havertz instead. If something happens to Felix, for example. So I think Watkins first. Jared 88 says wildcard 33, bench boost 34, free hit 37. Yeah, look, it's a possible strategy that I may end up on. I think the only way I could see me ending up on that is Leeds have to beat Fulham, almost definitely, in the cup for that to be a possibility. A cautious note on bench boost 34, and sorry to the patrons that this is going to sound really repetitive. Currently, simple logic would say, and this is an easy way to try and remember what's likely to happen with the fixtures currently. This could really change during this midweek. But currently, it seems reasonable to think that 28 postponements will go into 34 and 32 postponements will go into 37. Now, if you then look at game week 34, the options of teams that you would want to use for a bench boost in terms of your enabling players isn't great. It isn't great at all. And the two that really stand out is Brentford and Leicester. Now, under this basis, those two would play each other in that week. Great, perfect. You know, Rico Henry, Raya, Danny Wards, Ben Mee, Rico Henry. There's enabling options. Dewsbury Hall. There's enabling options under that circumstance. You could wildcard in 33. Perfect. Use as part of a bench boost. No problem. But I don't think there's a guarantee that the fixture would go in there. And that's partly because Leicester play Everton on the Monday night in game week 34. And should Leicester go out of the FA Cup in the 5th or the quarterfinals, well, obviously in the 5th, then it will happen 28. Should they go out in the quarterfinals, there isn't anything really stopping them holding Brentford, Leicester back and putting a bit more space in between the fixtures for 37. If Leicester make the semi-finals, they've also got an additional fixture with Wolves to rearrange. Now for Wolves go to Brighton in game week 34. Now from a bench boost perspective, you know, Brighton away and Leicester in a double is not terrible. They too would have enabling options, but probably only defensively. And Leicester would almost definitely play then Wolves or Brentford in 34, but the spacing would be tight. They'd play Monday, Thursday, Sunday. And I've seen Brendan Rodgers change whole teams under that circumstance before. Particularly if they're in a situation where, let's say, they're still in the FA Cup and they're safe from the drop and their league season isn't doing anything. And I think we'd have to be very, very conscious of that nearer the time. So all I would say is if you're relying on that Brentford-Leicester fixture for 34 as part of a bench boost is very, very dangerous. And the outlook for the teams you'd want to target to make that bench boost worthwhile might not be great. That's all I'd say about that. But it's all very subject to the cup results. Suddenly you have different results go differently. For example, let's just say Leeds progress to the semi-finals and then let's say Leeds double in 34, Bournemouth and Wolves, or Bournemouth and Fulham, and that's very reasonable. A couple of Leeds enablers, for example. So there's different things that can happen that can change the course of that. I'd just be aware of that situation currently. Subliminal Punker says, is Trippier to Trent worth another -4 this week? Already did KDB, Mitrovic and Shaw out for Shaw, Darwin, Tarkowski. Really depends on what your plan is going forward. On the face of it, look, I don't know what value you bought Trippier at for. I know you bought Trippier at 5 million, right? That's very difficult to sell. If you bought at like 5.6, far more reasonable to sell, for example. Currently, if it was me in that position right now, because I don't know where I'm going currently, I wouldn't want to lose Kieran Trippier. That would be my take at the moment. Gary Reza, my Chelsea correspondent, says, morning, mate. I hope you enjoy some, but not all of your weekend. What's Wolves' record like at the Lane? What's Wolves' record like at the Lane? Not terrible. I'm just trying to figure out why you're asking that. What's Wolves' record like at the Lane? Oh, we're playing each other next week. It's at Molineux. It's at Molineux, Gary, if that's why you're asking. That's all I can think that you mean by that. Our record at Molineux's not bad, actually. We've had some very fortuitous wins there, but yeah, we've won the majority of the game. Me and Bradley have a bit of a laugh. Every time I've been to Molineux in the last 10 years, we've won, which includes a League Cup game on penalties. And I am going next week as well. But I know that the order of balance means that could well change next week. But actually, our record at Molineux, Gary, and I think that's the question you probably meant to ask, is pretty good, actually. But I wouldn't read too much into that for next week, for example. For example, Antonio Conte hasn't managed Tottenham at Wolves, right? So what relevance does that necessarily have? If you're looking, let's just say Liverpool were going there and Jurgen Klopp's managed there for the last 7 years, there's more relevance, isn't there? That's all. Cole JB says, happy Friday, James. May your arrows be green. And to you too, mate. I don't think I'm too badly set. -4 Titans, 7 doublers. Essentially the worst bench in the world starting. I'd say the worst bench. They're all reasonable. Like Nonso, Ward, Andreas Pereira. They're all reasonable, weren't they? Ian says, evening from Melbourne, Saka or Salah captain, or should we just be happy to own both as he'll probably get a similar score this game? I've gone Saka. Yeah, doing the same, Ian, and I answered that earlier, obviously, with Alistair's question, but thank you, mate. Chris Pointer says, hi, James, looking to proceed through 25-29 without a chip. Not worrying about bench boost in 29 is quite liberating, but 28 is an issue. Looking at 8 players, 9 max, how many will be enough, do you think? Again, will 11 be essential? I mean, let's look at it like this, right? I've used the example where if Liverpool play in 28, with what I've got currently, I'd have 8. Technically, I have 9, actually, because I've got Andreas Pereira as well. Although there's every chance I'd just move it, because I wouldn't be fussed in preparation for 29. But let's take that I've got 8. So I've got 3 Liverpool, 3 Arsenal, and double Newcastle defence. How much more under the projected fixtures, which would be adding Wolves Leeds to Villa Bournemouth, would I want/need? Now, if running through, I think you definitely go for Villa there, because you've got 28 and you've got the double 29. And there's a case similar to do with Bournemouth, actually. You know, Solanke could be one that enables quite nicely. Villa away, then Fulham and Brighton, 2 home fixtures in game week 29 might be one that people are overlooking, but may look towards once they get to game week 28. Villa may have nothing to play for, and Bournemouth might have everything to play for. I used the reference when Watford went to Villa Park and won last season under similar circumstances. So how much for 28 specifically is 8 or 9 okay? Yeah. You don't. I mean, if you've got the Arsenal Liverpool and you've got a bit of Newcastle defensive, you've got the main bits covered, haven't you? It's just then a case of if Villa go off or not, because 3 hitters will go for Villa. You could be fairly sure of that. And that would be the makeup of a 3 hit right now. Would be, I think it would be 3 Arsenal, 3 Liverpool, probably 3 Villa and 2 Newcastle, based on how the fixture are likely to land. I think most people would skip Wolves Leeds, have the likes of Bueno, Nonso on the bench and stuff. So you cover off most of the damage. Probably just be Villa then, whether you're red or green for that week. Is it going to matter that much? Nah, I don't think so. Stavros says, hello, James. Already did KDB to Salah and Morris to Saka. Thinking to do Kane to Darwin and Cucurella to TAA. What's your thoughts about such move from -12 in total? But I think remove what's gone. -12 for me, I think it's tipping point that I don't like, but you've already made 2 of the moves, so treat it on its own. You can't change what you've done. Treat it on its merits. Kane to Darwin -4, I think yes. Cucurella to TAA -4, I think yes. That'd be my take. Because even if Cucurella's not a problem for you maybe this week, and I think he might be, but let's say that he did play, then he's not going to play every week. There's going to be problems for you lying ahead, I think. So you'd want to make that. If it's just the 1 week, I'd probably still do them both. But if you'd said to me at the start, -12 for all 4 of those transfers, even though individually all of them are good, I'm not keen on -12s. I just think he's one step beyond -8 that I think can prove to be a little bit unnecessary. But on the face of it, Stavros, if I was to do a -12, that's the sort of one I'd be considering. Yeah, go for it. Just be aware Harry Kane on his own can obviously outscore the 12. And that's always the danger with something like this. Similar applies with someone like Morris, to be fair, as well. Jack McKecken says, hi James, any thoughts on whether 29 or 34 looks better to use bench boosting? No, it's gonna be circumstantial, how teams are set up, right? So if you wildcard 33, you know exactly what you're dealing with for 34, right? So to say what's better, for 29, you're doing it more from a distance. Perhaps you're wildcarding 26, 27. It's even possible to wildcard 28, subject to who plays in that week. Let's take an example. Let's say Liverpool play in 28, and let's say Brentford and Leicester plays in 28. You then have Brentford, Leicester, Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle, all play 28 and all double 29. You could go your Arsenal then as well, and you could take your pick whether you want to move that back on in 29 or just play them for the single against Leeds. So even that's a possible, subject to the cup result. Wildcard even in 28. Bench boost 29. And I wonder how many people under that sort of circumstance might get to 28 and go, shit, that's what I want to do, you know. Might be. I mean, I'd certainly say under that circumstance, you'd probably power into Brentford straight away from game week 27, for example, because they've got a double before that as well. So it'd be double, cover the blank, and double again. Difficult to look beyond that. So it depends how you're perceiving it. From the fixture perspective, currently I think 29. And the interesting aspect of 29 is, if you look at the big hitting players for that week, Salah's got a double, but it's not great. Haaland's got no double. Kane almost certainly no double. There's a scope to do it and have very reasonable price players. So pick 15 players that from week to week you make a decision whether you start or bench. And that's potentially what I'd be looking at in the wildcard 26, where I'd be looking at benching headaches every week. But there's certain weeks, like I'd go for a bit of Leicester, and Leicester play Manchester City in game week 31 and then they're benchable, for example. Aston Villa or Manchester United. If I went all the way through, I'd still have some Villa assets. They're at Manchester United in 34. I wouldn't be bench boosting then, for example, under that circumstance. Benchable. I'm looking at that sort of thing currently. That's subject to Fulham winning, really, on Tuesday night. So it depends how you set it up. I think on the fixtures currently, 29. It's also worth saying you're likely to know the 34 fixtures before 29 starts. So if you set and you don't land for 29, doesn't look good, perhaps if you haven't used the wild card, you can always delay that decision. Go, do you know what? I'm going to go with 11 this week. I'll wild card 33 as planned. Bench boost 34. So flexibility, as I said on one of the chip pods that we did, is really, really important. I've said a number of times, I don't know how anybody could be absolutely certain on their chip strategy. I've got a couple of kind of A or B plans now. It might be that I need a C as well, subject to the cup results this week. Something to the really unexpected happening, for example. I think what I would say is for the bench boost right now, there are definitely enabling options to bench boost in 29. There might not be in 34. Let me put it like that. But there probably will be. Craig Tippins says, all right, James, you're also going to have more choice, just to add on that. Jack, it's not impossible. This is very unlikely. But 34 could be as low as 3 extra fixtures. Could be. Now, I think it'll probably be 5. We've got 6 in 29. I can't see 34 getting up to 6, I don't think, the way it stands at the moment. It could do, but I don't think it will. So you've got a little bit more choice for 29 as well. Craig Tippin says, all right, James, fixtures guru and FPL hero. Thank you, Craig. Right, I'm going to cover 2 more because they're what I can see, and I've already done an hour already. DC says, good morning. Would you do Shaw to Akanji to Robertson or Trippier? Would you do Shaw or Akanji to Robertson or Trippier to Trent? Look, again, I think it comes down to what are you planning for the next few weeks. Trippier covers 28, 29 brilliantly. Do you want to sell that? Akanji doesn't. Shaw doesn't cover 28. It says influence in terms of keeping your options open. So for me right now, I'd keep Trips. And LH says, morning mate, done 2 threes, contemplating a -8. Mitrovic to Watkins and Bruno to Gakpo. Open suggestions, cheers. I'm not massively keen on Gakpo. I'm going to guess you've already got I'm going to assume you've already got Saka, Odegaard and Salah in, is my assumption at this moment, because I prefer all 3 of them to Gakpo. If Mitrovic plays, you're going to be regretting probably not holding that a week more for probably Tony instead of Mitrovic. Bruno, good fixture 27, double 29. If you're free hitting 28, he's probably possibly be looking to keep. I think if you're just going to 1 week for Gakpo, under basically A or B potential chip strategies, then you're fine. I'd probably do it. Mitrovic to Watkins for this week individually. No, I don't think so. That would be my take currently, mate. All right, thanks, guys. There's a large number of you I've not got through questions, but I hope what I've covered has I've sorted most of you out. Obviously, deadline streams at 5:30 as well. The chat will open just before 5:30 p.m. UK time, so it's another opportunity to ask some questions in there. But thank you very much if you did submit a question and contribute to the stream. Very grateful for it. Smash a like, hit the sub button on your way out. I'll be back on YouTube later today at 5:30 as said. Suj will be back with me for the benefit of the audio listeners on Monday for a review of the Game Week 25 weekend. But just leaves me to say for now, thanks to everybody on YouTube, and for the benefit of those listening to the audio, good luck this weekend. Cue music, please, Mansholt.